Florida's sweeping immigration law has been in effect for about 6 weeks now. Since it was signed back in May, some reports indicate that hundreds of undocumented workers have actually left our state, and they do that every week. But is that really the case?
Channel 9 investigative reporter Shannon Butler looked at the law and what's going on at Florida's construction sites.
All over the state, you see this: condos, homes, and commercial buildings going up all over. But some say Florida's new immigration law may change that. One of the toughest in the nation, the law seeks to crack down on employers who hire undocumented workers. It requires that private employers with 25 or more employees use E-Verify to determine if a person has work authorization, or they can face fines. It also says that individuals who use falsified or invalid documents to get work authorizations can also face criminal penalties. And Florida also has invalidated out-of-state driver's licenses that are given to undocumented immigrants. Gilberto Alvalante took this video of a Central Florida construction site just after the bill was signed, saying usually this site is filled with workers. We don't know if these claims about why the site is empty are true, but what we do know is that contractors who own these companies are struggling. Greg Batista says the law is no doubt part of it.
They're actually leaving. I know firsthand, having my own construction company and knowing many people that have their own construction companies, how this is adversely affecting an already challenged labor force.
There are more than 770,000 undocumented people in Florida, most working in agriculture, hospitality, and construction. But some contractors believe that number could change.
And they tell me directly that they have better opportunities in adjoining states, and that is not good.
The state of Florida has not tracked how many workers have left or why, and the governor only saying in a stop in Sarasota,
"You can't build a strong economy based on illegality."
In Orlando, Shannon Butler, Channel 9 Eyewitness News. Now, we have reached out to some of the immigration offices. We are told there are no concrete numbers to show how many folks are leaving. Most of what they know, they say, is through word of mouth. Now, the Florida Policy Institute has stated that the legislation could cost Florida's economy $12.6 billion in a year. Martha.
Shannon, thank you.